Welcome to the NSIS Confluence Knowledge Base. NSIS stands for National Systems Interoperability Service. We'll start with a quick overview of the contents and structure of the knowledge base and then have a look at how to get around in Confluence. The purpose of the knowledge base is to store studies, learning materials and open source code materials dealing with interoperability, especially SIF, in the Australian K-12 education context. It's also a practical and tested resource which has already saved hundreds of developer hours. This is an overall conceptual map of the knowledge base contents, focusing on learning materials. Learning materials could be divided into several major categories. There are case studies. These are high-level presentation, 4-page brochures aimed at decision makers and business managers. For example, here is a case study outlining the Tri-Borders project. Another learning element is the online boot camp. The boot camp's divided into 10 chapters. Each of those chapters has a number of modules, each of which contains a little snippet of video of a live presentation. It also contains some lecture notes, diagrams, and a number of exercises for developers. There are a number of general learning materials organised by audience. For example, you may be a decision maker or a project architecture staff or a developer. There will be a slightly different set of information for each. We'll have a look at the developers learning page. You can see there's some general information here and more detailed information on this side, including the boot camp, open source frameworks and so on. And there's also a set of key topics which are of particular interest to developers. There are about 30 or 40 of these key topics, and they each focus on a particular aspect of developing in SIF. For example, here's a high-level agent design topic which gives a flow path about what kind of framework you might want to use, how you want to develop, do you want to develop or configure, and so on. There's also a set of open source materials on Confluence. The most important of these at the moment are probably the frameworks. There's the SIF Common Framework, the SIF Demo Project, which is a framework already set up as an end-to-end SIF implementation. And there's the SIS Baseline Profile Framework, which contains a number of business rules already enacted between the most common objects. On each of these pages, there's some general information about the framework, whether it's supported or unsupported, and some context which will help you determine whether it's useful for you or not. All of these frameworks are stored on a GitHub repository and are available as open source. There are also some lower level project materials which can be found. For example, here is the Register of Australian Schools project. If we have a look in one of the documents here, we can see that there is some high level architecture diagrams and other pieces of information about agents and business rules and so on, which might be quite useful to developers doing a similar project. There are also pages in the SIF specification space, and they include pages which would provide you with background information on subjects like the SIS Baseline Profile. Confluence is a very sophisticated wiki tool that allows for rapid ad hoc creation and retrieval of information. It's made up of pages, each of which has a unique title. Pages can be edited using rich text or wiki markup editors. Confluence uses the idea of spaces to structure the wiki. A space is like a container for pages, and each space can have its own access permissions and look and feel. We use spaces as containers for different work areas, for example. You can see all the spaces for which you have viewing permission on the Confluence dashboard. Because spaces have different permissions, some may be closed to you. Others may even be open to anonymous public access. But most of the spaces that you'll see here are available only to participants in the NSIP program. The knowledge base has been built up partly by reusing materials developed in various SIF projects. This can be done without inconveniencing project participants too much because Confluence makes a good medium for shared effort. Pages can be made accessible to all project participants, and each page provides a single authoritative version, while revisions can be tracked to contributor from the page itself. For example, you can see the revisions on this Charterscope page for a project. We can see that there are 50 revisions on this page, and we can see the authors for each revision as we track back through them. In this way, working in Confluence on current projects, we can store learnings for the future. There are a number of different ways to navigate Confluence, as we've seen. One way is to go to the dashboard of Confluence and drill down through the hierarchy of spaces. For example, I can drill down through the scope of the Try Borders page. Another way to find your way around in Confluence is to use the breadcrumbs at the top of the page. This way I can go back the way I came, open up higher level pages, and eventually find myself back at the dashboard. There are more ad hoc ways to search as well. For example, type the word agent into the search page here, and we see a drop-down list appears with all the most commonly accessed pages with the word agent in the title. Another way of finding specific topic information within Confluence is to use labels. Labels, or tags as they're called in some other systems, provide a way of identifying a set of pages according to topic area. For example, looking at agent again, we can see a number of different pages, not all of which have agent in the title, but all of which have been tagged as being relevant to the topic of agents. Using some of the more advanced functionality of Confluence in combination with labels, it's possible to group together sets of pages by their label content. So here we have a fairly sophisticated Try Borders index, which gives some top-level information about the Try Borders project and gathers together pages based on their labels. And you can see that all of these pages have multiple labels. These indexes can be constructed on a quick ad hoc basis.